Good afternoon. We will start the third session. My name is Ahmed Gaber. I'm a professor of chemical engineering, Faculty of Engineering at Cairo University. And I will be honored to moderate this session. The topic of the session, its title, it is Investing in Desalination. The geographical domain of what we are going to talk about is the southern and eastern Mediterranean countries. The focus, as you can see in the title, is on investing in desalination. Desalination, as you know, it has been mentioned several times in the Cairo Water Weeks, the importance of desalination, and for obvious reasons, not only in our part of the world, but in many other parts of the world. There are hot topics for people, specialists, or people who are interested in water sector in general, or desalination in particular, that they can attend the conferences and see technical reports, published matter, flood of research on different subjects under the big title of desalination. Among those subjects are financing models, project delivery methods, risk allocation, success factors, critical success factors in different desal projects, renewable energy and desal, the future of green desal. And in one of the reports, World Bank 2017, to justify or to present the importance of the subject matter, it says that by 2050, water scarcity could cost the MENA region a drop between 6 and 14% of the GDP each year as a result of water scarcity. In the MENA region, we know that half of all the desal plants worldwide are concentrated in the MENA region or the Middle East. In a World Bank report 2019, the reference mentioned that about 18,000 desal plants were reported in over 150 countries, producing 87 million meter cubed per day, supplying 300 million people all over the world. 44% of those facilities are in the Middle East. When I look to our panelists in names and affiliations, I told myself we have here a group of experts that might be able to answer any question. Then the people who will be with us online and distinguished guests with us here, I can claim that they can address and they elaborate based on their rich experience on many questions. But I think the issue is what are the questions? Then you can say that we have the answers, but we want to know the questions. The organizers of the Cairo Water Week, they phrased 4 questions. 2 questions about the past and 2 questions about the future. The two questions about the past, they're asking to what extent desal has contributed to solve the problem of the water scarcity in this region. And in the past, there is a question addressed to the panelists about what are the lessons learned from the few decades in coming up with certain specific pieces of advice for the decision makers and practitioners. Those are the two questions in the past. Then you can imagine that I'm going to ask our distinguished panelists two questions that relate to the past. Tell us what you think about the contribution of desal in solving the scarcity issue, and what kind of lessons that you can share based on the past. Then I'm going to address two questions in the future. What you think desal can contribute facing the climate change, and what you think in the future, I'm talking about some sort of foresighting about how the desal can contribute in solving the water scarcity issues in the future. We have 9 panelists, distinguished panelists. We have 4 with us here, and we have 5 online. Are all of us together now? Are we, the online panelists are with us now, or you can bring them in? Okay, that's great. Then, because of the time limitation of the panel, and I have been told that we are going to have a lunch in the same room followed by another session, then allow me to invite Alain Mercier, if I pronounce it right, I'm sorry. If if you can kindly introduce yourself, and my understanding that you are going to share with us some slides.
Okay. Please. Well, thank you very much, President. I'm Alain Messonnier. I'm the president of the IME. IME, it's the Mediterranean Water Institute. And I don't know if you saw the slides. Please, can you bring the slides? And voila. Okay. But rapidly, the Mediterranean Water Institute, it's an organization created in 1982 in Marrakesh, and that brings together ministries and public authorities in charge, water management professionals and experts. And it's the first network and platform today for exchange good practice in management and the water management in the Mediterranean. This is an overview of our member in the Mediterranean. And the main themes and priorities for the next years are almost the fourth principle: integrated water management, water scarcity, ecosystem and biodiversity, and energy and water. And we are going to speak about that. First, an overview of the situation in Mediterranean. Available water resource per capita are completely different in the north and south. And it's not the double, we are speaking about 250 times. It's not something easy to manage when you have an overview of the situation of Mediterranean. The demand and needs are excuse me. Oh, yes. The demand and needs are also completely different. Only in the irrigation In the south, it's almost 85% of the demand. In the north, it's only 65%. But in the south of Spain, it can reach more than 90% of the demand. So it depends on the place we are in the situation. Also, the use of water resources is completely different in function effectively of the disponibility we have in the natural resources. And so it's less than 20%, for example, in France or in Balkan, and it is more than 100% in Egypt here or Libya, for example. And so it is not sustainable in this region. It's why this region has developed a new non-conventional water production. But we have also a new impact that was the climate change, and combined with a rise of temperature and evaporation. And you can see this is all, an overview of the situation in the Mediterranean. The degrees of the water and also the salinity of water is completely different from one side to another, because the connection with the ocean in the Occident, and a little connection in the oriental part of the Mediterranean Sea. Facing water scarcity and climate change, that means enhanced resilience of systems, include seriously climate change as driver in policy, strategy, and plans. Improve public awareness, we have spoken about this morning, by means of education, capacity building, and institutional reinforcement. Finance need by infrastructure for meeting growing demands in order to improve conventional water resource operation, maintenance of dams, transfer, irrigation facilities, etc. This is very important. And implement new non-conventional infrastructure, desalination, and reuse. Governments and sustainability by means of public participation, moving towards real integrated water management resource. Cooperation and exchange in the Med countries. This is an overview of the development of desalination in the Mediterranean. And as you see, and we know very well, this is the south and the east part where the desalination experience are developed a lot. Just to remind the consumption of energy, this is a different type of production of water, and it's very important for the future and for the protection of the climate change. And that we are going to speak about desalination, and desalination is the most consumption in terms of electricity and energy. In the region, in the next future, Algeria has a huge program of desalination, exactly the same in Egypt. I don't know if the information is complete, but this is a huge investment. I know that in Egypt the objective is the security of water for people, and in Algeria is the need, because the situation of the impact of climate change is very drastic now, even for the capital, Algiers. In Morocco, I think that we are going to see more specific, the case of Morocco and Tunisia later on. But it's very interesting to mention the case of OCP. OCP is the main industrial company in Morocco, and they have the objective in 2030 to be to have only their own production of water with non-conventional water, and this is very important. For now, maybe I try to answer the question that we just speak about. Very few margin in demand management to face future challenges. Population and climate change are the most important. Abstraction with available water resource and index, is more than one in larger, as we saw in the map, large area of the region. Almost only new resources can meet unavoidable demands, and conventional are exhausted. And in the case of Egypt, for example, and these new resources are non-conventional. What have we learned about the development and implementation of desalination investment policy plans and program? Public agencies should take responsibility to reduce costs related to risk, to attract financement. Private sector need good definition of future sub-demands and warranties for investment recovery. A good planning is needed to face not only demand growth, but also balanced recovery in coastal aquifer, replacing current unsustainable abstraction. Large desalination plants offer advantage in terms of final cost and energy nexus. And finally, what could the water policy community do to enhance the financial sustainability desalination investment? Assure good implementation and environmental policy in national legal framework, including sea impact, and a fair tariff system of tariff if desalination is giving solution to entire basin users. The World Water Council mandated the IME, the Mediterranean Water Institute, to make a feasibility study about the possibility to create a world observatory of non-conventional resources and also renewable energy adapted to this or associated. And we are going to present the result of this study at the next World Water Forum in Dakar.
Okay.
So just to inform you that we have our forum, Mediterranean Forum in Malta from the 6th to the 8th of December. So you are always welcome, and let's start the debates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alien. From what you have presented, we can see a table with different countries, and in each country, how many plants or how much in production of desal plants in this specific country. And I have seen some efforts to have a comparative study to compare between the different projects all over the region in terms of the technology, years in operation, the project delivery method, the source of finance. I mean, we can assume that we have very rich database about the desal, how desal contributed to the making available water in our region. I think we can see from the nice presentation that Alan made that definitely there are specific achievements all over the region in different countries, and I have seen also some studies about the extrapolation of the rate of growth of the sector of desal in a particular country. I think now it's about time to go to the next question, related also to the past, to the accumulated experience in different countries, related to how much we learned about the development and the implementation of desal investment policies, plans, and the programs. And here I'm going to ask my understanding that Hayat bin Mansour, she is not with us now. Then I will ask Wafiya Al-Haraki to kindly share with us her views related to the question of the experience from her point of view related to policies, plans, programs in the past. Please.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Al-Haraki Wafa from the General Directorate of Water from the Ministry of Equipment and Water of Morocco. It's a pleasure for me to participate with you in this third forum on water investments, and we thank you for your invitation. I don't know if you can see the presentation that I have shared. You can see it? Hello? You can see the presentation, please?
You can, yeah. You can
Yes,
see
okay.
I can see it here.
Okay. So let me present you the context of desalination in Morocco. As you know, our country, the economy of Morocco is based basically on agriculture, mines, and industry. And all these sectors naturally depend on the water availability, the water resources availability. But regarding the context of water resources in Morocco, which is irregular over time and space, and also the climate change effects, which are being heavily touching water resources during the last decades and causing serious droughts and unpredictable rainfall and limited rainfall over the country. So the use of desalination is more and more prominent and necessary in Morocco. This is why we have already prepared a regulatory framework that is organizing desalination in Morocco. Now we have the law 3615 of water, which has dedicated a whole part to conditions of development of desalination plants. There is also the new law 4618 of public-private partnerships, which may comprise desalination plants projects. And also we have the law 5405 on delegated management, as the construction and operation of desalination plants can be delegated to a delegator if the public service comprise this service. And in terms of the planning, implementation, and operation of desalination projects, it can be done in four main forms. First of all, a direct implementation and operation by state services or public establishments. Second of all, a construction and operation by private partner on behalf of state services and public establishments. It's the kind of PPP. The construction, third of all, the construction and operation by private partner on behalf of local authorities as part of a public service delegation. And finally, there is the opportunity of that the entity, a private entity, constructs a desalination plant for its own service. In terms of the main achievements of desalination in Morocco, we have currently about 9 plants in operation, with a production capacity exceeding 402,000 cubic meters per day, and 7 other projects are under construction in several regions of Morocco. To address the questions that we are dealing with in this session, in terms of the impact of desalination plants developments in Morocco. So these projects have contributed actively in securing drinking water supply at the beginning of the southern region, as the desalination plants were concentrated in the southern region. But during the last decades, there are multiple other projects that are being constructed in other regions like Agadir and El Hoceima. So these projects have reduced the water stress in these regions of Sousse, of the southern of Morocco, and in the northeast of Morocco. And also in they have actively contributed to covering industrial water needs in coastal areas, as we have the OCP office phosphate industry, which have constructed 2 desalination plants in the Atlantic coast. The other role and major role that desalination plants have played over this year is preserving existing irrigated perimeters, as it was the case in Agadir projects, as we have faced an overexploitation of groundwater resources. So this project has come to preserve the existing perimeters of Shtuka. And also there is another projects that are expected to develop to contribute to developing new irrigated perimeters, as it is the case in Dakhla project, which is under launching by the Ministry of Agriculture in the south of Morocco. And finally, all these projects have naturally improved climate resilience of water supply systems. In terms of the place of desalination in water plants, so Morocco has accorded an important place for desalination in the coming programs and plans. So we have the program of 2027 of public water supply and irrigation, where we have expected 3 upcoming stations of Dakhla, the large seawater desalination plants of Casablanca, and Safi projects. And also we expect to extend 3 existing desalination plants. In the long-term horizon, the National Water Plan 2050 has fixed the target volume of desalination identified up to 1 billion cubic meter, which depends basically on the evolution of the impact of climate change on water resources. And this is in accordance with the objectives of the new development model of Morocco, which is under implementation by the Moroccan government. Here, just the position of the expected projects in the 7 coming years. I want just to highlight here that Morocco aims to implement this kind of projects under public and private partnerships in order to take profits from the expertise of the private sector. Now here, just to focus on the projects of Casablanca, which is a large desalination plant, which is expected to afford capacity of 300 cubic millimeter per year, with a capital cost estimated at around 9 billion Moroccan dirham. The main role of this station would be to secure the drinking water supply of Casablanca State region, which is the first economic region in the country, and to reduce water stress in the lower part of Rabia basin, which is at the center of the country, and finally to improve climate resilience of this system. And the question that was highlighted by the moderator is about the constraints and the lessons that we have learned during these years about desalination plants developments. So in Morocco, according to the experiences that we have already conducted, we can confirm that there is still the constraints of limited cost recovery of desalination investments related mainly to institutional, regulatory, and social constraints. As we have the drinking water price, which is set at the national level, there is also the constraints that we try to take into account some social factors, as we have a social bracket of consumption of water less than 6 cubic millimeter, 6 cubic meter per month, and also this conducts to the fact that the tariffs do not generate generally the development costs. And in some regions, like in Agadir, we have this competition between certain towns and irrigated perimeters, which reflects some water conflicts on who would use the more expensive water resources and who would remain using the conventional water resources. So dealing with these constraints is still being a major constraint to us. And finally, we have the high energy consumption, which is still prominent in our projects, as we have the example of the desalination plants of Casablanca, which is under study. The requested energy is estimated at around at more than 1,000 gigawatts per year. So this is the second main constraints that we are dealing with. And in terms of perspectives of desalination investments enhancements, we can highlight here that we are trying to boost more and more private public partnerships for upcoming desalination plants projects, which would allow to take profit from the expertise and capacity of financing of the private sector. And in projects that involve farmers, the organization of farmers through associations and their prior subscription imply their commitment to pay the tariff to cover the operation costs of the irrigation water service. And in projects where we have subsidies from the public budgets in initial investments or participation of international institutions or farmers in financing the projects, the final tariff could be maintained at a bearable level. Another way to address these constraints that I have already mentioned is using renewable energy to reduce the operation costs of the desalination plants and reducing the final water price. We are studying and examining this possibility in the case of Casablanca large desalination plants. And finally, based on all the experience that we have already conducted, we try now to clarify the institutional framework of the desalination, as we have projects that were constructed by the National Office of Water and Electricity. We have projects that have been conducted by OCP, by the industrial sector, and we have already also some projects which were set by the Ministry of Agriculture. So based on all these experiences, we are trying to clarify the institutional framework of desalination plants or desalination development, either a national agency of desalination or the Ministry of Equipment and Water, which would continue this strategy. So that's all.
Thank you, Wafia. Thank you very much. As a moderator, I was tempted to exceed the time given for the panelists, because I think you had made a beautiful presentation as a cross-section. I think it's very informative about the program in Morocco for desalination. And I think you touched upon so many issues that we are all keen to know what's going on in each country in the Mediterranean region. Thank you very much, and I'm sure if the time would allow, I'm sure there will be many questions that will come from the audience, including myself. Now I got a warning from the organizers that we have to finish by 1:40. Then we have to be more focused in the coming presentations. I wish to invite Ignacio Gionesius, Deputy to the CEO in Aqua Med Spain. I hope he is with us online. And I wish that if you can kindly focus on the specific issue of how in the past your experience in developing policies or preparing plans and the programs had contributed to the big picture of desal in the region. Please.
Thank you, Ahmed, and good afternoon to all. Let me first congratulate the European Union and the Union for the Mediterranean for this initiative, and also thank them and the Spanish Ministry for inviting me to participate in this event. Thank you very much and congratulations. Well, as you know, in Spain, the first desalination plant was built in the Canary Islands in 1964, but the increased intense drought that we suffered during the 90s caused desalination to make the leap from the islands to the peninsula, especially to the Mediterranean areas. Today, we have almost 800 desalination plants of different sizes in Spain. The technology is reverse osmosis, and Spain ranks as #1 country in Europe and 4th in the world in desalination installed capacity. My company, Aquamed, is a state company that depends on the Ministry for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenges, and we design, build, and operate all kinds of infrastructure entrusted by our government. Our core business is desalination. We have 12 large desalination plants, and the total production capacity of our plants is around 400 million cubic meters per year. Currently, we're going to enlarge this capacity up to 500 million cubic meter a year. It's clear that all this investment in desalination has contributed to the water security of Spain's Mediterranean regions. However, we consider that the promotion of investments in non-conventional resources within a framework of an integrated water resource management and taking into account the nexus between water and renewable energy is a key aspect in the Mediterranean. In addition, we think that it is also important to promote initiatives like Alan just said a couple of minutes ago that allow knowledge and information sharing on this type of non-conventional resources in areas such as the Mediterranean, where many countries share and face similar water challenges. We must not forget that a greater knowledge contributes to better uncertainty management and decision-making. As I just said, planning should consider unconventional resources. We could say that there must be a legal and regulatory framework for the use of these resources, and this frame must support their inclusion in the water cycle. Basin plants should treat these new resources as an additional source to the traditional ones, incorporate them into planning as base flows if possible. These plans should promote the use of reuse and desalination to replace other resources in structural scarcity regions and when water bodies are in poor conditions. Also, within the river basin plans, the management of these resources must be programmed for temporary scarcity situations and prolonged droughts. All the above must be supported with measures and incentives to promote the use of these new resources. Considering that water is a public good, it is important to have a clear and regulatory framework for the operator. There must be certainty in the way the resources is allocated, concessions, and also in risks and the price or water tariff settings. This is essential to ensure the sustainability of the investments. I don't know if you want me also, Ahmed, to talk about the climate change and how it affects all desalination plants, or maybe for a later question. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours again.
Okay, thank you. I think you touched upon something that if I request you kindly to elaborate. You mentioned about the regulatory framework and its importance, but you mentioned or you linked it to the water cycle. And here, I mean that if you are producing desal water, which is expensive compared to producing potable water or municipal water from surface water or groundwater, and you are pumping it in a network, wherever, in any city or a region, and you are talking about water cycle, which means that this water that you are pumping in is subject to leakage or subject to that there will be high unaccounted for water or high water consumption per capita. Here I understand the importance of your point, And here I wish that you share with us your experience in Spain for how to ensure the governance of the water system as a whole, including the supply side and not only limited to the production side. Is my question clear?
Yeah, it's clear. Well, thank you, Ahmed, again. Well, as you say, it's desalination water is probably the most expensive water, but we don't forget that the most expensive water is the one that doesn't exist. Okay, and answering your question, it's important to in Spain we consider desalination water as a public domain, you know, like water from the river or from aquifers. So it's another water that goes into the system, and you must have concessions for that water, and it must be part of an integrated water management system. Okay, you must consider that in the planning, and also you must take into account the users, future users, and don't forget that once the desalination water is used, it goes to the system again. Okay, you can reuse it again, for example, for agriculture if you want, or in cities. And I think that is the most important part, to consider desalination as another source. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, you know, if we have the luxury of time, I would myself address other questions, but allow me to invite our panelist, Isa El-Wer from Jordan. We are very happy that you are with us physically. And I will address the same question to you about what we have had learned over the years in Jordan in policy, planning, and program design that contributed to the achieving the role of desal in Jordan. Please.
Thank you, Ahmed. Yes, thank you. And pleasure to be here in Egypt, our second home, of course. Unfortunately, I'm on the delivery side of the projects, not on the policy making.
الميكروفون قربوا شوية.
هيك تمام. Yes, I said thank you again, Ahmed, and it's a pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, I'm not on the policy side. I'm on the project delivery side. But what I can tell you about the lessons learned, now Jordan has been working on implementing desalination project. As everybody is aware, we're roughly around the second poorest country in the world. And since the 90s, we were working or planning for making these mega desalination projects. As Mr. Allen said, it's always cheaper to have large-scale desalination schemes, makes it more affordable. Since the 90s, our big lesson was we were hoping to have like an international cooperation mega desalination project to provide water to the country. And the major lesson we learned that when it comes to water supply, it needs to be under your sovereignty, it needs to be under your full control. Politics should be separate from supplying our residents and citizens in Jordan in water supply. This year, actually, for the first time ever, 2 of our drinking water dams dried up. So we learned a very crucial lesson that we should have started this much earlier. It's never late to start. We're going forward with the Aqaba Amman water desalination and conveyance, which we also refer to as the national carrier. We'll be desalinating 300 million cubic meter per year and conveying it to the government, to the kingdom's 12 governorates. It will supply whole Jordan with water. So I guess when it comes to the lessons learned, you need to be responsible for your water supply and what we had to suffer this year from the scarcity of water, and as I said, 2 dams dried up for the first time in history, we are going very confidently and more vigorously in implementing this strategic project. It will be the first big scheme water desalination project in the kingdom, and I think it will pave the way for much more projects in the future.
Are all the desal plants in Jordan are private sector participation? The project delivery method is using private sector?
Yes.
For delivery and for operation? For how many years? The agreement generally?
It will be a BOT, on build, own, operate, done with the private sector. Concession will be between 25 to 30 years. That will be in the negotiations, it will clear out. Actually, we started tendering. We pre-qualified 5 consortia already.
Okay.
We'll be distributing RFPs next month, inshallah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And we have the support of the whole government on this project.
Yeah.
And I see Harold, one of our potential financiers from EIB, is on the panel. I guess he'll be speaking also about it.
شكرا.
Thank you.
بالتوفيق. Well, now it is the turn to ask my dear friend Ater Hanoura. Ater Hanoura, for all of you to know, we in Egypt, we consider him the authority when it will come to private sector participation. Then whoever is working on a project that will include a private sector participation, a tender or deal or a contract, whatever, I think the first thing we think about is to call Ater and ask him his advice. Then I will ask Ater, and I know that he have been in close relationship to the policy making and the kitchen related to the desal. Kindly to share with us your opinion related to policy planning, program design in the last years and how it impacted on achieving whatever we had achieved so far. Please, Ater.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for having us here. Thank you for the invitation. Actually, I want to start with the fact that more than 80% in the last decade, more than 80% of the successfully operated desalination projects are made under the PEP structure with different kind of structures. The lessons learned, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to tell you about the lessons learned that I have experienced in the last decade or the last 14 years, but I want to brief it in different phases. There's a lot of lessons learned in the phase of planning, and the second phase is the phase of project preparation. Then the procurement and the lessons learned from procurement, which can jeopardize a project. Then the construction, financial closure, and construction, and then the operation. If these phases are taken care of properly, then the operation will be very smooth. The problem in the different countries, we are one of them, is that we always try to shorten the period of studies, shorten the period of planning, because we're always in a hurry, and this has a negative impact on the project. I believe that the holding company for water and desalination and the Ministry of Housing had created a very ambitious plan of till 2050 to reach almost 6.4 or 6.5 million cubic meter per day. What we have currently is almost 1 million. For the first 5-year plan, we have to fulfill almost 2.5 million, something like this. The main problem that we are facing always in desalination projects, not only in Egypt, in other countries which I've participated in different countries in the region, in Africa and in the Middle East, is the right allocation of the land. And I repeat, the right allocation of the land. Sorry. The piece of land that is allocated for the desalination project might turn the project from feasible to unfeasible. Or in other words, the affordability of the government to buy this water coming from this station on that land might be unaffordable. Why? The land and the seaside. Selection of the land is not only the piece of land with the dimensions and the enough area for the desalination project to be implemented on. It's also the most crucial part is on the seaside. If it's in the Gulf, do I have to put the intake pipe 500 meters inside in the water, 600 or 7 or 100 or 50 meters? Big difference in costing. 500, 600 or 1 kilometer inside the water to reach the currents for the environmental impacts. This needs higher cost, pumping system, energy for pumping, and accordingly more capex. Accordingly, you have higher cubic meter price. The land itself, is it what kind of land? Do I have to do piles in foundation, or can I do it on another flat slabs or whatever? Another big factor on the price. The third is how far the network that you will be pumping in the desalinated water to be distributed through the network. Is it 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, or as one of the projects that I studied with the EU 5 years ago, it was 59 kilometers far. The network was 59 kilometers far from the selected piece of land for the desalination. When we studied that, definitely this project is not feasible by any means, because the cost of pumping and repumping to reach the network is higher than the cost of the desalination project. Accordingly, this is not the appropriate piece of land. So selection of the lands in the very early stage of planning is very important. The second part is the area and the size of the land while selection. Because when you put a piece of plant for desalination and you start with 20 or 50,000 cubic meter per day, you want to expand as the years go, as the population increase, as the development, urban development expands. So you need to have expansions. Is this kinds of expansion taken care and considered while reserving this piece of land or not? This is a very crucial issue, and actually, as in some areas, in some countries where we're studying this, when there is a need for an expansion, we didn't find any piece of land because this turned to be a very dense population area, and actually all the areas are consumed, and we have to go back in the desert and have a long pipe for the intake and for the brine disbursement. So the preparation and the selection, the calculation of the increase of demand, increase of population, all these issues should be taken care of crucially, because it might, by the end of the day, jeopardize your plan. I want to jump to another point, which is the project preparation. I'm just taking one example of the lessons learned from each of the phases. The project preparation. Project preparation, where you study the feasibility of the project and prepare the technical documents and the financial documents to be tendered out for the private sector, or for, depending on the procurement way, either EPC or EPC plus financing or under PP projects. These kind of studies actually should be checked clearly because there is an affordability limitation for the government. If it's a PP and I give the project for, attended out the project for 20 years, 20 years might come out with $0.50, or let me say 8 pounds or 10 Egyptian pounds per cubic meter, hypothetically. If we go for 25 years, because in this project, the government is the off-taker, is the only single off-taker. This might drop it down to 7 pounds per cubic meter. Where is the affordability of the government? And how the government is subsidizing part of the water cost. You have to calculate as well the leakage in the system, in the network, which all of the countries in the region and in Africa have some kind of leakage on their old networks, which should be taken care of. And then you have subsidy, you have leakage of the system, and you have risk of collection, bill collection. All this should be taken care of and put all this kind of risk premiums, because this gap between the cost of money, the cost of the bill coming out from the private sector, which is hypothetically $1 million per day, okay, and what you're collecting, which is 300, 400,000 cubic meter, 1,000 Egyptian pound per day for this 1 million, then there is a gap of 600,000 Egyptian pounds worth of leakages, worth of bad collection, and worth of subsidies. Then the Treasury or the government, the Ministry of Finance, has to plan their financial capacity to do this. So project preparation should not only be taken from the technical point of view and the who will be coming to bid and the cost. It's the affordability of the government in this case, and how to remedy all the risks that we have in leakages or collection or whatever. I want to jump again for the next phase. I'm just taking one of each, which is the procurement. Procurement is a very crucial, very important, very tricky phase. And I want to claim a lot of studies made by the World Bank and the EU and others, saying that in general, over 70% of project failures are due to bad procurement or bad selection. So this phase should be done very transparent, and the documents and the contract should be thoroughly revised and thoroughly examined. Compromises in time, compromises in the qualification of the bidders who are bidding, this actually leads to problem in the implementation and contracting. In desalination in general, sometimes some of the countries love to have the direct award. Direct award in a technology like the desalination technology, which is actually developing, and the cost of construction and cost of equipment, cost of technology is going down, and the consumption of power is reducing as the development of the technology, because as you all know, that more than 1/3 or almost 1/3 of the cost of a cubic meter of desalination is worth of cost of energy. So this should be taken in consideration while procuring, because the solar energy could be one of the solution. However, this is again against land. You need a bigger piece of land. However, you can go into the desert and put it, but you should not go that far because of the transmission costs and issues. But this should be taken care. In the procurement, you have to have at least 3 or 4 or at least 5 packages or 5 stations tendered out for the competition before you go for any negotiation with a direct award, because you need to have a benchmark. Otherwise, you will be negotiating something that you don't know what is the real cost given the current technology and the current economical situation of the country. I don't want to take more time. I know that we have got limited things.
Thank you.
There is a lot of lessons learned
thank you.
that we can write books on.
Thank you. This is what I call the golden rules. There are قواعد الذهبية that are related to infrastructure projects in general and desal in particular. And I would agree with Engineer Ater about the importance of site selection, the importance, I would say, even I would take it one step further. Well, I would say that the success of a project, a lot will depend on the planning phase. And I think in many countries, we spend a lot of time in a later phase, and we don't spend the time and produce quality plan. And the quality plan, quality design, quality tender, quality procurement, quality construction management. At the end of the day, we will have the project. Now, I think we have an issue related to energy and related to, as Engineer Ater referred to, and we mentioned earlier in this room about the future of renewable energy and desalination, and we mentioned the story or referred to the energy, water, food nexus. And now I'm going to invite Muhammad Abdel Qadir Ramahi to kindly address this issue about renewable energy investment policies and desal investment policies based on your vast experience. Please.
Thank you. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity. Before I start, I would like firstly to get a bit of context to our role from a country, region, and company point of view. And I'm going to tackle the title of this forum, the Water Investment Policy. So I come here on behalf of the investors, and I represent Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, Masdar, which is one of the subsidiaries of Mubadala Investment Company. A bit of context, it's one of the leading sovereign investors globally. Mubadala currently has a net value of $245 billion on multiple sectors. We are present in more than 35 countries. And according to Fitch, we are a AA rated. According to Moody, we are a AA2 rated. So we stand proudly as one of the leading global investors at large. We come from the UAE, and when you talk about the UAE, it's practice on the ground. So we practice what we preach. We are the leading nation in desalination, the second in the world in terms of capacity. Saudi Arabia is 17%. We are at 16.6%. I just refreshed my data and looked into the International Desalination Association publication as of today. The current capacity of desalination globally is 97.3 million cubic meter per day. We in the UAE represent 15 million cubic meter per day. We are 16.8, and only the 6 GCC countries represent half of that capacity. So bear in mind, what we bring on the table here comes with practice. We, on fact, made the revolution of desalination since the 1960s. So all these technologies that you see, all these world-renowned companies, come because of scale of deployment. We implemented in this region since more than 4 decades. Moreover, we have proudly started in the UAE the IWPP system, the Independent Water and Power Producers, which implemented the PPP model, or BOOT, and that was back in the 1997-1998 privatization process, which took us 1 year to consolidate, kickstart, and bring in more than $30 billion of international investments in the very first year. So we've been progressing with the IWPP model now for more than a decade and a half. We at Masdar, we are the champion of renewable energy. We're a smaller arm of Mubadala. We are only net worth $20 billion. We have around 13 gigawatt capacity in 32 countries. And when we entered the year of pandemic last year, we were at 5.5. We managed to double that in less than 18 months. Now, to address this particular question, what can we bring on the table in terms of lessons learned? It's our vast experience on how we implemented that as an investment arm, as a region, as a country, and as the company that excels not only in clean renewable energy, but also in sustainable urban development. And we know there is no sustainable development without water sitting as the central pillar. Thus, all politicians speak of the water energy nexus and the water food nexus and the security energy water food nexus. It all comes together in a full picture. Now, back in 2015, we've launched an initiative fully funded and supported by His Highness Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. It's called the Renewable Energy Powered Desalination Program in Ghantout. And with this program, we invited the international community at large to come and participate in the new generation of desalination that implements the latest and greatest of innovations in technology in a very specific track, which is membrane desalination. We knew that membrane is the future. Why? We are phasing out thermal desalination because of the inevitable decoupling between energy and water generation, because of the diversity of the energy portfolios, and because of the evolution whereby membrane desalination becomes key. According to latest statistics, RO itself represents more than 35% of the desalination capacity growth globally. Number two, we had a very challenging target to reduce the energy intensity by at least 25%, the cost by at least 25%, and it has to be coupled with a renewable energy source. So the entire electricity consumption required by the RO needs to be coupled with a renewable energy, PV, CSP, wind, most probably hybridized solution. It has to implement an integrated financial model based purely on a liberal economic platform that has no subsidies and that achieve at least 12% IRR. When we launched it, 171 companies expressed interests. We made a condition that the company need to fund 50% of the pilot. Despite that, it's in the UAE, but they need to fund it because we need to make sure that they are bankable, they are achievable, and we needed to make sure that whomever is playing a role wants the long-term projections, because our aim is to commercialize technologies. We've shortlisted around 18, and then we signed with 5 companies. We've signed with Veolia, Sedum Veolia, with GDF Suez. We've signed with Abengoa Water. We signed with 3D Systems, and we signed with Mascara. It's an evolving French company that specializes in what we call containerized solutions, because we wanted to look at technologies from both aspects: the grid connected, large scale, and also the isolated containerized solutions that comes as a standalone plug-and-play solution. Now, as a result of this program, 3 of the 5 succeeded the qualitative and quantitative. We've published that, and we run it through an advisory board of 12 international world-renowned institutions, world-renowned leaders. The president of IDA during that time, Dr. Corrado Somoriva, Pacific Institute, Dr. Peter Greek. The actual Nobel Prize winners, the big names in the water industries, were amongst the 12 who validated the findings. And by the way, the findings of Ghantout program revolutionized the industry as we speak of today. I'm attending conferences as an audience, and people are referring to the new outcome as per the Ghantout results. There, we were speaking at 4.5 kilowatt hour per meter cubic. In Ghantout, we reduced that to below 3.3. And 3.3, I know a lot of audience would say we've achieved that before. 3.3 is a wholly cumulative on the entire process, including pre-treatment, post-treatment, and considering also Gulf water, which is far different from Mediterranean, for example, with TDS exceeding 47,000 ppm. We've made it on pure-based liberal economy of scale with no subsidy, direct or indirect, no hidden subsidy. And we managed to reduce the cost at that time to the ballpark of around $0.7 per meter cubic. I know now it's below 5, but remember that program was 2.5 years ago published. And we are proceeding now with the commercialization of these technologies on large-scale projects as Mustard. The idea, just to try and wrap up, is to integrate each and every block of desalination, RO, with a block of, in this region, photovoltaic, because it makes good sense. And as Engineer Ater said here rightfully, the model works on the desalination plant being at the coastline, while the PV plant being inland, because coastline land is A, very expensive, and it does not suit PV because of proximity to the sea. The only condition we need to make sure is that it has to be also located at the right place where we get the highest irradiation, global horizontal irradiation for photovoltaic, and proximity to the grid to make sure that we don't increase the capex. Of course, if we want to model to work well and to be competitive, because at the end of the day, even a noble cause like what we call now sustainable water desalination needs also to be competitive with conventional, even with the integration of photovoltaic. So I cannot go to a politician and tell him, well, Your Excellency, I'm being environmentally friendly, you need to pay a premium. No, I am environmentally friendly, I'm zero carbon footprint, and you know what? I'm still 10% lower in levelized cost of water compared to the conventional. Nonetheless, we need to have the right configuration. Connected to the grid, so we use the grid as storage, and that's, in my opinion, a win-win. Why? Because from a utility service provider point of view, it would be nice to have the entire capacity required for a desalination plant produced in or consumed in 24 hours, but produced in 8. Because there you can use the excess of energy and fuel saving, peak shaving. And that's a win-win situation. For the sake of time, I will stop here and invite questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing this very rich experience. I personally congratulate you guys for whatever you had achieved in the years. And it's a great opportunity to share. And I think one of the themes in the Cairo Water Weeks is definitely experience sharing. Now, for the interest of time, we need to call upon our two panelists, David Taylor and Harold Scherer, to address the future and to ask them about what could be done by the policy makers to enhance the financial sustainability of desal investments based on their experience. We'll start with David Taylor.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to speak to the audience today. I shall be as brief as I can in the conscious of time. Let me put this into context. We've undertaken studies in the whole of the CEMED region, and I'll focus on Egypt. We know it's a country that has severe water availability issues. Around half, so 500 meters cubed per person per year. So half of what is expected as a sort of minimum threshold. A population that's going to increase by 50%, estimated by 2050, and obviously impacts of climate change. What does that mean? Well, we believe from a study undertaken a year or so ago that Egypt, to address its shortfall in water, would need around 107 million meters cubed per day by 2050. And the power required for that would be around 12 gigawatts. So it's a significant expectation. Now, of course, from our perspective, you know, the future, we would certainly encourage wiser use of groundwater resources, increased use of effluent reuse, taking a more integrated approach. We would certainly encourage demand-side measures. And we know that in Egypt, for example, it can range from 20% non-revenue water to around 80% revenue water. And we're encouraged that the country is already making good efforts in that regard. But it's still very reliant on heavy subsidies. So it's failing to deliver a service which is full cost recovery. So that needs to be addressed. But I think what we can see is that the future is quite optimistic. We've looked at energy intensity. We would generally, in future projects, seek to support projects that are below 4 kilowatt per hour per meter cubed, and we can already see solutions on the table at about 1.5 to 2. So the technology is certainly available to deliver energy efficient desalination solutions. We're a signatory of the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance, so it's important that all projects are capable of protecting the marine environment. So I think that's an important area of focus. But we're an institution that's made a commitment to the principles of Paris alignment for all projects from 2022 onwards. And that certainly does address the questions of this more integrated approach, less energy intensive solutions. And we would certainly be, we're an institution that would support increased use of private sector. We must crowd in, not crowd out. And as others have quite rightly said, to do that correctly takes time. So I'll stop there, but I think that gives you a flavor of our opinion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harold, David. And I wish our last panelist, Harold, to address the same issue related to future policy recommendations. Harold?
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
I guess,
we can hear you, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I used to have connection problems and the video is also not well. Well, thank you for inviting us. The European Investment Bank is one of the largest financer, if not the largest financer of water infrastructure every year throughout the world. And we have financed a number of large desalination plants. With large, I mean above 100 million cubic meters per year, and now increasing. And one of the speakers in this panel has already mentioned it. We are also involved in the development and in the preparatory studies for the Aqaba Amman project. So, well, the fate of the last panelist is always that most of what I plan to say has already been said. So it's a bit sad from my side, but I want to highlight a couple of things. For us, and with the experience we have, 3.5 cubic meters, 3.5 kilowatt hours per cubic meter for the full process is not a best practice figure anymore, for instance. Yeah, I can clearly state that we are financing desalination plants with probably 10 to 20% lower overall primary energy demands. What I would like to connect to is the issues that have already been raised. Yeah, and I'd like to start a country that wants to have a desalination program needs to develop its own capacity. I'm convinced that it is of extreme importance that you build capacity that is nationalized, if you want. And for the time being, that is nothing you can just click and decide it's going to happen. But the alternative is you have to have really competent advisors then that are committed to the course, and you're able within the resources you have gathered to first decide where you want to go with your desalination plan. And one part, of course, it's been mentioned several times, is desalination is about water, but it's also about salinity. Particularly if you intend to use the water for agriculture, it is, in my view and in my experience, very important that you have an idea where do you want to go with your salinity levels, particularly if you intend to reuse the water that's been used publicly. Yeah, the other thing is the procurement. It's been mentioned, and I can only highlight this issue. The procurement process, the way you structure your tendering, even though it is just maybe only a small margin you can achieve, it is something that's going to project over at least 25 years. So mistakes you make in the first year will be multiplied through the in the coming years. So it is really, really important to think about the procurement process. Just one thing, in a previous session I've listened into, somebody mentioned that there were 60 companies in Egypt showing interest in this program. I believe there are 60 competent desalination companies in this world that can build very highly efficient desalination plants. Yeah, they're probably much less, and a well-structured procurement process that probably takes a bit longer than what's anticipated will not only distill those competent companies, but it will also help you to really achieve the lowest prices. The other thing is, this is to highlight the importance of this procurement process and advisors. There is an asymmetry. Yeah. Usually these companies, they do lots of desalination projects every year, whilst a national agency does a couple of one maybe over a decade or so. So the way and the capabilities and resources in these companies are usually much higher. This again highlights the issue of advisors. Finally, we spoke about powering desalination. The EIB is like the EBRD, very committed to the Paris Agreement. The EIB, I think it is known to everybody now, is supposed to become, or on its way, I should say, to become the European Union's climate bank. And obviously we are committed to, well, best practice when it comes to energy. The last point, I'm conscious of the time, is one thing more. Desalination is not only about energy consumption, it is also about chemicals you return to the sea. That is an issue. I think, well, I should probably say humanity has learned the hard way. Even if you put small doses back to the environment, the accumulation over many years will lead, if you're not careful, to an accumulation of chemicals. So the EIB in its last project has decided that we are, if it is technically possible, are focusing now and on a basically no chemicals return policy to water sanitation, desalination. That means nothing that's been added in the process should be returned to the sea. I think I'll stop at the, and we are, so this is achievable. It is in most cases even more cost effective, frankly, because many chemicals are being used in desalination plants that provide that provides safety to the operating procedure, but they're not really necessary. And again, a competent authority needs to monitor this process. That's it from my side at this point.
Thank you, Harold. I think the organizers are pushing us to come to a closure for obvious reasons. I wish we had time to open the floor for discussion, but unfortunately we can't under the circumstances. I definitely thank the audience and the panelists and the people who kindly assisted us to run the session. Thank you very much, and I think the lunch is waiting for you. Thank you. Huh?
Thank you.
Second session will be when? 2:30. Second session is 2:30. High level panel. Okay, thank you very much.